Calling all physicians and other high-income professionals who are ready to supercharge their financial success. I'm Dr. Disha, your host of the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, designed exclusively for you. Together, we'll debunk money myths, share brilliant frugal hacks, and uncover the path to financial independence. So grab your stethoscope and get ready to heal your finances, $1 at a time. Let's dive into the empowering journey of financial freedom. First, this episode is sponsored by Pearson Ravitz. Pearson Ravitz's story begins with Dr. Stephanie Pearson, a passionate OB-GYN at the height of her career. But then, a shoulder injury struck during a precipitous delivery. Her dreams were shattered, leaving her unable to practice medicine. Determined to make a difference, Stephanie became an advocate for her peers, guiding them through the complex disability process. Alongside insurance expert Scott Ravitz, Stephanie founded Pearson Ravitz, a company determined to approach insurance differently. Together, they set their mission to educate and empower physicians to protect their most valuable asset, their income, and the most important people in their life, their family. Today, Pearson Ravitz serves the medical community in all 50 states. At Pearson Ravitz, they understand the unique concerns of physicians. Life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness or injury could leave you and your family in a devastating financial situation. But with a little planning and guidance, you can prepare for every possibility. Visit PearsonRavitz.com to schedule your consultation with a Pearson Ravitz advisor. Welcome back to Episode 8, everyone. Today, we're going to be continuing with our baby steps. So far, we've covered baby step 1 through 5. Baby step 1 is protect. Baby step 2 is to save up a starter emergency fund. Baby step 3 is to start investing and game plan student loans. Baby step 4 is to knock out high-interest debt. Last week, we went over baby step 5, start maxing out tax-advantaged accounts. We went over general investing principles, all the accounts available to us for investing for retirement, and some of the asset classes of investments we could buy in these retirement accounts. I do have a retirement account cheat sheet available on the Frugal Physician website. For fun, I went through the irs.gov website and summarized the salient points of most of the accounts available to us to invest for retirement. Yes, I understand that makes me a huge nerd, but as my son says, nerds rule the world, so ha. It is available to you, and it is a one-sheet summary of all the stuff that we went through last week. Now that you have an overview of the asset classes available for us to invest in, let's look at how we're going to put together an investment portfolio. For one couple's portfolio, or the total investments a family has, it's generally recommended to have a certain percentage of stocks for growth and a certain percentage of bonds for stability. For example, you have 80% stocks and 20% bonds, or 60% stocks and 40% bonds. This is called an asset allocation. Some investors include some of the alternative asset classes listed in the previous episode, but for most investors, stocks, bonds, and cash equivalents will do just fine. The general rule of thumb devised by John Bogle is that the percentage of bonds in your portfolio should equal your age. This principle ensures that as someone grows older, they have more and more safe investments in their portfolio. Quote unquote safe. Remember, we went over the risks of bonds as well during the last episode. So a 20-year-old has 80% stocks and 20% bonds, and a 40-year-old has 60% stocks and 40% bonds in her portfolio. If you want to be more aggressive, have more stocks and less bonds. Want to be less aggressive? Have a higher percentage of bonds than what I just mentioned. Target date funds are basically designed to apply this formula automatically to your retirement accounts. They define a set retirement date and then rebalance to the desired asset allocation based on the person's age. However, like we said before, they only know about the money in one account. Remember, the asset allocation for a family or a person applies to all their accounts, not just one. So unfortunately, target date funds in different accounts don't know about each other, so they become more problematic if more than one account exists. Thus, choosing our own investments in the accounts generally works out better. How do you decide which stocks and bonds to include in your portfolio? Well, thankfully, we don't all have to become individual stock traders. There's a lot of data out there that has found that passive index investing outperforms active buying and trading individual stocks over the long term. This is because active trading involves a lot of costs that eat into any marginal gain in returns. While past results do not guarantee future gains, and investing will always have risk, passive investing with index funds has proven to be a low-cost way of getting average market returns, which generally tend to be positive over the long term. So which index funds should I add to my portfolio, you might be asking? When designing a portfolio, there are a couple of questions to ask yourself. First, what is your risk tolerance? The higher your risk tolerance, the higher percentage you would have in stocks. How much international exposure do you want to have? Most people recommend at least 20% of the stock allocation to be international in a portfolio. The third is, do you want simplicity or do you want to tilt your portfolio? The risk tolerance question is first. Deciding your risk tolerance is not an easy task. Think back to the last bear market you've experienced and think about whether you have a tendency to sell when the market is low. You don't want to do that going forward, obviously. If you haven't been through a bear market yet, go with Jack Bogle's rule of determining your stock to bond asset allocation, which is pretty conservative. Diversification is key to making a portfolio sustainable for the long term. In the words of John Maynard Keynes, the father of modern macroeconomics, it's better to be roughly right than precisely wrong. Diversification helps us weather the storm of daily fluctuations in the stock market and the eventual downturns. Diversification means to invest in a lot of different things so that when one thing goes down, you're protected by the other thing that didn't go down, and eventually, hopefully, things will go back up. That's why international exposure is recommended to benefit from the worldwide market. In case the US dips and other countries do better, you'll have some exposure there too to even things out. When I designed my portfolio, I preferred simplicity to tilting. A good place to start is a 3-fund portfolio. It includes 1 total domestic stock market index fund, 1 international index fund, and 1 total bond market index fund. This way you get the ultimate diversification and essentially buy a piece of the whole market. Once you identify these 3 funds that fit your criteria in your various accounts, you simply figure out how much you need to buy according to your desired asset allocation. Then you buy and forget. You come back once a year and rebalance, and voila, you're managing your own investments. A more complicated portfolio has up to 10 funds in it, with specific tilts towards higher risk, higher return investments. For example, some people allocate significant percentages of their holdings to small value stocks or to junk bonds or to emerging markets. You can choose to do that if you want to, but you don't have to. So now we've covered the basics of building a portfolio and picking a desired asset allocation. But you may be wondering how to pick a fund and what makes one total market fund better than another. The short answer, for me, the best fund is the one that has assets in my desired allocation that gets decent return at the lowest cost. No matter how great your portfolio return is, if you're paying a ton in management costs, your portfolio won't grow as well. It pays to be frugal. For example, say you invest $100,000 and earn a steady 6% for the next 25 years. If you had no costs associated with that investment, after 25 years, your $100,000 would now be worth $430,000. If you had to pay 2% a year in costs, your investments would now only be $260,000. You'd have halved your potential gain just by increasing the costs by what seems like a paltry 2%, but it's not. Remember, the growth comes from compounding interest earning interest, and small percentages really make a big difference to compounding. Where do you find the information on the cost of funds? The answer lies in the prospectus. Prospectus is the cheat sheet to a fund's characteristics. It shows you what shares the fund holds and its past performance. It also lists costs as an expense ratio. That's the cost of the fund. An expense ratio represents how much of a fund's assets are used for administrative and operating expenses. It's calculated by dividing the total fund costs by the total fund assets. The Vanguard S&P 500 ETF has an expense ratio of 0.03%. That means the fund costs $3 per year for every $10,000 invested. The T. Rowe Price Equity Index Fund has an expense ratio of 0.21%. that means it costs $21 per year for every $10,000 invested. A good expense ratio is anything less than 1%. That's $100 a year for $10,000 invested. But the lower the expense ratio, the better your portfolio growth. Actively managed funds generally charge a management fee as well for the manager that's doing the active trading. That's usually somewhere between 0.5 to 1%. You may also be charged loads, sales charges, and redemption fees. These costs quickly eat into any extra advantage these actively managed funds might offer in their sales pitch. So now that you know how to pick an asset allocation, let's talk about asset location. You know you can have multiple accounts, so what funds should you buy in which account? What I haven't covered yet is that once you're done maximizing your tax advantage account, you can also start a brokerage account, which looks very much like your retirement accounts, except that you pay taxes on the growth of that account. So it's important to be mindful of the consequences of taxes when designing your portfolio. The general school of thought is that things that throw off a lot of income monthly, like taxable bonds, REITs, or mutual funds with high capital gains distributions, are very tax inefficient. These should be held in tax-protected retirement accounts, because in a brokerage account, they create a tax drag. Assets that are volatile, like stocks, and assets that are tax-free, like municipal bonds, can and should be held in taxable brokerage accounts. So that doesn't mean you don't put stocks in tax-protected accounts. It just means that when you start investing in a brokerage account, you want to have things that don't get taxed that much. Holding stocks in a brokerage account also gives the opportunity to tax loss harvest. That is, to sell a stock at a loss and buy the similar thing back at the same time to dock a tax loss. And we can go over the details of that in a future episode. Basically, tax loss harvesting helps you use up to $3,000 worth of losses to offset any active income for that year in taxes. So it can be pretty advantageous. So volatile investments can be advantageous in a taxable account in the event of a loss because you can dock them as losses for tax purposes. So now you know how to do an asset allocation, and now you know where to put these investments based on the different accounts that you have. But if you decide to forego a DIY process and decide to hire a financial professional to manage your accounts, that's fine. But know the basics so you can intelligently look over what they're doing. If you do decide to hire someone, I highly recommend going for a fee-only fiduciary advisor instead of one that charges you an asset under management fee. An asset under management, or AUM fee, can be a huge drag on your returns. We talked about what a difference 1 to 2% of costs can make to your portfolio's growth. 1% of $1 million portfolio is $10,000 a year. You can find fee-only advisors that can provide a much better value. Being a fiduciary means that they're bound to do right by you and invest in your best interest. Finally, you should know about the insurances available to you if you put your money in a bank to invest, or if you invest your money with a brokerage firm. The FDIC, or the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, is an independent agency created by Congress to ensure the stability of a nation's financial system. The FDIC insures up to $250,000 per depositor per FDIC-insured bank per ownership category. FDIC insurance covers checking accounts, savings accounts, money market deposit accounts, CDs, and more. That means a couple with a joint account would be covered for $500,000 total. So if their bank failed, the FDIC would reimburse them up to $500,000. Any excess amount could be lost in a bank failure. So you can check if your accounts are fully insured at edie.fdic.gov. It's important to note that brokerage accounts that hold stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and the like are not covered by FDIC insurance. Instead, they are covered by SIPC insurance, which has different rules. SIPC insurance is a private non-for-profit organization created by the Securities Investor Protections Act, that's SIPA, in 1970. SIPC insurance covers investors for up to $500,000 in securities, which include money market funds and certificates of deposit, or up to $250,000 in uninvested cash for a total of $500,000 in coverage per customer. The limitations of SIPC insurance are as follows. SIPC only insures accounts at brokerages that are members. In contrast to FDIC insurance that protects cash value of losses, SIPC does not protect against decreases in the value of investments. Investors get back the value of cash and securities in the amount minus any debt on the date that SIPC files the court application. Also, SIPC does not insure investment contracts, fixed annuity contracts, foreign exchange trades, or commodities or futures contracts. Of note, REITs or real estate investment trusts are considered investment contracts and may not be covered unless they are registered with the SEC. Finally, if a brokerage fails, individual investors must file a claim with the SIPC, whereas FDIC steps in automatically if a bank fails. Okay, so I've summarized a whole lot of investing philosophy for you. Here are some takeaways. There are multiple accounts available to you for retirement investing. So check out that retirement account cheat sheet available to you for download at thefrugalphysician.com. Investing is critical, and it's not optional if we want to retire comfortably. Investing does not mean speculating on the future of the stock market. Investing means buying and holding assets that will bring in income or appreciate in value in the future. Diversification is the way to mitigate risk. If we buy a little of everything, the chances are lower that we will lose it all. Determine an asset allocation based on your risk tolerance. Rebalance at the end of the year with new contributions. Costs of investing are your biggest hindrance to gains. You should know how to look at a prospectus and determine which fund has the lowest cost. Many millionaires have been made through low-cost index fund investing. You can do it too. Know the tax consequences of your investing and try to minimize tax drag. Stay the course. Investor behavior is a huge determinant of investment success. Try not to sell all your holdings during a downturn. Instead, hold tight and try to look at it as a sale on stocks instead. Write it down. Write down your investing goals, asset allocation, and plan for things go south in an investor policy statement. And then do it with your household team. Make sure everyone is on board and everyone is comfortable with your desired asset allocation. If you want to learn more about investing, here's some of my favorite books. The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins is great. Boglehead's Guide to Investing is really thorough. Investing for Dummies and Personal Finance for Dummies are great books to just summarize the basics of investing. The White Coat Investor book by Dr. Jim Dahle is great. The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel is amazing. Some of the other books I referenced to write this podcast include The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John Bogle, Get Good with Money by Tiffany Alish, The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley, and 30-Minute Money Solutions by Christine Benz. Finally, I'll leave you with this. Anyone who's not investing now is missing a tremendous opportunity. That's by Carlos Slim, the richest man in the world from 2011 to 2013. The best time to start investing was when you were born. The next best time to start investing is right now. Compounding takes time to reach the exponential phase. Get started now. You don't need to take an immense amount of risk or shoot for above average returns. Average returns will do just fine as long as you keep your costs low. Compounding interest will do the rest. Now, a final word from our sponsor. At Pearson Rabbits, they understand that life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness, injury, or catastrophic event could put you and your family in a devastating financial situation. Physician-founded and physician-focused, Pearson Rabbits builds human connections before they create quotes. Visit www.pearsonrabbits.com today and embark on a journey of safeguarding your future. Thank you for joining me on this enlightening journey through the many faces of frugality. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Remember, you're not alone in this pursuit of financial freedom. Feel free to connect with me on social media, share your success stories, and keep the frugal flame burning bright. Until our next encounter, stay focused and stay frugal, y'all. I'll see you later.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.